Okay, cool. Cool. All right, there we go. All right, let's discuss the game plan here for this afternoon. Actually, hang on just a moment. Let me kind of clear up some space here so you guys can see my whole screen. That's not what I want. Let's see. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. Okay. All right, guys, welcome to week 10. We have got a very straightforward afternoon ahead of us with just really a few goals. This is the week that we begin really sort of designing for project 2 by the creation of our wireframes. We're going to have a brief lecture kind of discussing what wireframing is. It's a subject that we did not really tackle during the first project, in that we were building a simple single column website. For the second project, as we dig into multiple column layouts, discussing like proper wireframes definitely is a priority, so that you guys can really begin to sort of customize and tailor a design that works for your specific site. So we'll begin by discussing that, and we'll do that with a small lecture that I put together that I'll share with you guys. And then we'll discuss a little bit in terms of just some ways that you can make the process go a little bit easier for yourself if you're using programs like, let's say, Photoshop or Illustrator to create your wireframes. There's actually a whole bunch of different software applications that are very specific to creating wireframes, and I'll talk about those during the lecture. But for those of you who maybe don't have access to any of those programs, I would love to spend a few moments in Photoshop or Illustrator talking about how you can accomplish the same task pretty easily. Let's see here. In addition, I would love to give each of you a few moments to discuss the direction that you're planning on taking project 2. So pretty straightforward, all sort of project 2 centric here today. It's actually one of the few weeks that we will not be doing a coding demo. So there actually will not be any coding homework this week. The homework will really relate to the creation of those wireframes. That will change next week when I will make a walkthrough for you guys. Next week, I'm going to actually introduce you guys a new aspect of CSS. We'll talk about basically some methods that you guys can use to create those multiple columns, but we'll kind of see it. We'll save that for next week. I'm going on a ramble here now. So let's actually dig into the topic for this week, that being wireframes. So I'm going to pull up a PDF of the lecture that I put together. You're welcome to download this, that it does exist in the week 10 area, but if you want to just kind of kick back and watch me as I go through it, that's totally fine as well. Let's see, I do find, actually, I'm going to download this to go through. I do find that when I preview it, I can go forward, I can't go backwards. So just in case I want to go backwards to a specific slide, it will be much easier for me if I just download this. Here, actually, I think this might work as well. Let's see. Yep. Nope, I should have followed my instincts and went right to my download folder. There we go. All right, so as I mentioned just a moment ago, the topic of today's lectures is wireframes. Hang tight here, let's see. And the topics in today's lecture are going to include like what are website wireframes, like what's the purpose of these things, as well as how to make these wireframes. There's a number of ways, again, that you can do that. So first and foremost, like what is an actual wireframe? So a wireframe is a visual prototype or a visual representation of a website or web page that focuses on the content, layout, and behavior, okay? And it's important to note that it does not really include any of the styling, the color, or graphics. It's essentially just a blueprint like a blueprint, let's say to a house, that shows the plan for plumbing and electricity without showing the interior design. So, if you've ever seen a blueprint of a house, it's just that, right? It's a technical drawing. And that's very much what we're doing with a wireframe. And it's not the most intuitive thing, at least initially, for a designer. Like all of us who come from a design background or learning to become designers, inherently, we want to jump right in and we want to start designing. We want to work with colors, we want to work with fonts and images. And when it comes to building a website, that's actually comes directly after building the wireframe. Because quite frankly, if you're going to build a functional design, you have to first know what you're designing with and what you're designing for. Otherwise, you're really just guessing. So what we're going to do is we build our wireframes, or when you build a wireframe for any website, is that you first focus on those three things that are listed up top there. The content, figuring out, like, on any given page, what is the content? Like, what images are going to go on that page, or how many images are going to go on that page? What's the actual text content? And furthermore, what's the behavior? So far, when it comes to behavior, we've really dealt with building a website on a very, very basic level, right? Like we had a navigation on our previous site, and when we rolled over our links, they changed. When we clicked on them, they changed. But there are an infinite, well, not infinite, but there's a lot. There is next to an infinite amount of interactive behaviors that could be programmed into a website. And we want to account for these things before we start to make these things look like stuff, okay? Below here is really sort of an example of what a wireframe looks like. It is essentially a grid that has the actual content accounted for. Okay, I'll kind of break down as we're moving forward what some of these elements are and what they mean, like what are the best practices. But important to note here that there is no real color that's being used. Gray tones can be used. Okay, gray tones typically represent an area of high importance. Okay, so what we're seeing here in like this example web wireframe is that like this top area where navigation is, as well as these three call to action areas. These are the areas that we want to place the most importance on as designers. So we would want to eventually, on the next step, use things like color or image to really, really attract our users' eyes to these areas. A website wireframe can also show a relationship between pages. And they allow you to navigate between a series of mockups with clickable components. There are a number of applications that you can use to make websites that you can build in some very basic interactivity so that you can start to do prototyping. Now, in an intro web class like this, we will not be doing prototyping with these. Instead, we're just going to very much lay out the layouts and account for our content. But a wireframe is constructed using basic boxes, lines, and other shapes to create an outline of the functional parts of a web page without wasting time creating an intricate, polished design. Real quick question. I'm realizing right now, guys, that my dog is sitting here next to me chewing a bone. Is that like coming off on the audio? Is that distracting? If it is, I will move her.
We can't hear it.
No, good. Okay, awesome. That will keep the peace here if I can let her continue to sit here and do her thing. All right, thanks, Jacob, for the feedback there. Let's see here. So oftentimes the wireframe is the first step, or oftentimes really it's more like the second step. The first step you guys have already done in that you guys have put together a flow chart. But the flow chart, once you've designated what pages are going to be present within your website, the second step really would then be to figure out what those pages actually are going to hold and how they're going to function. All right, so I guess let's discuss the why. Like why make wireframes? There's two main purposes as to why we would create these. Number one is a communication thing. Ultimately, it helps communicate design concepts to the team of web designers who might be working on a project, and to the clients who the website's being built for, or any management. So these, in terms of saving that time, we are separating the functionality of the website from the way that the website looks. If we are figuring out all of that functionality and the design at the same time, and then we present something to a client and they're not happy with whether it's the design or the functionality, we've got to start completely from scratch with both of those elements, which is a very time-consuming process, which costs the client a lot of money unnecessarily, and it costs you a lot of time unnecessarily. And that's really what it boils down to, guys, is the saving of time and money for both you and your clients or the team. Okay. Now, we start with a sitemap or a flowchart. Those terms are very much sort of interchangeable. But this is the part of the process that creates the sort of like the map of the existing website, essentially keeping track of the pages that are going to be present and what pages are accessible from other pages. Okay. For example, in a website wireframe like this is saying to us that we start at the home page, and that from the home page, let me close this real quick. I'll minimize this for a moment so we can see this. So we start at the home page, and from the home page, I have three choices that I could make. I could go to a products page, an about us page, or a blog page. If I choose to go to the products page, from there, I have the ability of breaking things down into men, women, or accessories. And then ultimately I could, from, let's say if I were going into the men's category, I could go into shirts or sweaters. Okay. So it delineates the pages that are present that must be accounted for when we do begin designing and we do begin wireframing. It's a very basic document. But obviously for more complex websites that might have 30, 40, or 100 or 1,000 pages, it's a very, very important document, right? We wouldn't begin designing the look of the website without figuring all of this stuff out first. And then again, there's one more tier to information architecture before we move forward. And that is essentially building a wireframe for each of these pages, or designing a wireframe. Okay. So here, let's go full screen again with this. Okay, so when it comes to creating a wireframe, we want to make sure that we understand what the goal of each page is. Wireframes essentially help us visualize and provide a structure for those ideas. So this is a basic form, web form page, FORM. So where somebody could enter, let's say, a name or an address and have options and maybe have a message area or a CAPTCHA. And this is what a wireframe might look like for a form page. Now, again, notice that the form is not designed at all. Now, the grid is, but in terms of colors, fonts, images, borders, those types of things, those are not included here. We are just simply figuring out what the functionality or the goal of each page actually is. Okay. Once you begin creating a wireframe, don't use distracting colors or images, as I've said. You want the wireframe, again, to focus on the layout and the behavior. Even the font you use should be generic. In general, Arial is just the typeface that is used for most wireframing, Arial or Helvetica. Images, we don't actually plug images into a wireframe, but rather we designate an area for them in our grid, and we draw an X through them. So whenever you're looking at a wireframe and you see a box with an X, that's representative of an image that eventually will be placed into that area, okay? Copy on a page can be placeholder copy, using Lorem Ipsum, or canned copy like generic calls to action, such as sign up or buy. That's very common. A lot of times you'll find on buttons, it'll say something like, whatever the button is doing, like submit or sign up, or whatever it says there, buy. Other than that, you will tend to find that headers or subheaders will have the actual text it's going to say, and those are examples we've seen in several of these. So like new products, or in this case, actually, it's just sort of generically saying headline. But those are all ways that you can handle your type. But by and large, the type just tends to be very generic, where we're accounting for it, but we're not worried about the actual text being there or the design of it again. Let's see. So in some cases, if you find that generic copy doesn't do your vision justice, you can replace that with initial placeholders with more detailed copy, especially if that copy takes up more space. Like if you're dealing with building a website that has a lot of copy, you probably want to get the actual copy first before you plug it in into your design, because you want to make sure you're giving yourself enough room to account for it. On the website you guys will be building for this next project, the text will be at sort of a minimum. I mean, we're not going to have a ton of it, so I think using lorem ipsum is certainly fine for this type of a project. Let's see. And lastly, how to make wireframes. So these are 3 programs that are specific to creating wireframes: Acture, Sketch, and Adobe XD. If you have the Adobe Creative Cloud subscription, you do have access to Adobe XD, which is a very, very basic program. It essentially just allows you to draw boxes and plug in pre-made like web elements like form buttons or carousels, things of that nature. Acture is a paid application, but Sketch does offer a 30-day free trial to Mac users. But most students tend to use Photoshop or Illustrator to create wireframes. Again, I'll take you guys through a basic demonstration of how I might create a wireframe in Photoshop or Illustrator. Really, for the most part, they would be the same in either program. So that's sort of a basic rundown of like what wireframes are. Before I jump into Photoshop and Illustrator and give you guys some tips on making these, let's take one more brief moment taking a look at what the next portion of our project is. We'll read through that, and then I'm going to open things up to questions to see if you guys, if you need any clarification in terms of what we're going to be doing. And then I'll jump into Photoshop and Illustrator, and I'll make you an example of a wireframe. But let's take a look at how this all relates then to our next step of our project. So if I go back, I think what was it, week 8, I believe, or is it week 9? It might be week 9. Yeah, I'm going to go back to week 9 just for a moment, and I'm going to open up the project 2 spec sheet. And we're going to talk here about the 3rd step of the process. You guys already turned in your proposals. I realized actually this morning that the dates were wrong on those proposals. It wasn't due on the 22nd, it was due today on the 26th, but same thing with the flow chart. This date is accurate here for the wireframe design concepts. These will be due November 2nd. And what you guys are going to be doing is designing and presenting a wireframe for the homepage and one of your sub pages. Okay. So by now, with stuff that was due today, you should have turned in a flow chart. You will want to make sure that that is submitted if you haven't done it already before you do your wireframe. Okay. But essentially, it's very, very basic directions here. You're just going to design a potential homepage and subpage wireframe for the websites, and they'll be saved out as flattened PDF files for submission. So this is not a document that you are going to code, but rather it is a document that we're going to draw out. Again, either in Photoshop, Illustrator, or if you have experience using Adobe XD, you're welcome to use that as well. But again, I'll build you guys one in a moment. A very common question with this is, which subpage should you choose for this? I would say the answer to that question is generally the one that represents most of your subpages. Your contact page will likely look different than all of your other subpages, but for the most part, most of your subpages will have a lot of common elements when it comes to how you're representing the information. Okay. So that's something that I want you guys to think about. Also, when we think about the project parameters for this project, some things you want to be aware of. Let's see here. Oh, you know what? Actually, I used to have on this project, I used to have some requirements for the homepage, but it looks like I took those out this semester. Yeah. Cool. So again, I will take you guys through the process in just a moment of starting to build a wireframe. But again, a wireframe for your homepage and a wireframe for one of your subpages. I mean, based on what we talked about thus far, is there any questions that you guys might have in terms of what I'm asking for next week in terms of these two things? Again, I'll make one for you in a moment here, but anything that might not be clear at this point? Okay, cool. You may have questions after I work in Photoshop or Illustrator, and that's cool too. I'll open it up again for questions here in just a moment. So what we'll end up doing here over the course of like the next 10 to 15 minutes is I'll just record myself here building an example wireframe from you guys. I have Photoshop and Illustrator open. There's really no advantage to using either one of these programs because what we end up doing when we're making a wireframe is just using the basic shape tools with a white fill and a 1 or 2 pixel stroke. And either of these programs do a wonderful job of doing that. I think I'll probably do mine in Illustrator. All right, let's see here. Actually, guys, hang on one second. Before I begin a new document, give me like not even 10 seconds here. I'm just going to get a warm up with my coffee real quick. It's going to help my throat. I've been sick for last 4 days, and I need some warmth on it before I lose my voice here. So just one second. Okay, thank you for your patience. All right, so I'm going to begin by creating a brand new document for this. Now, on the assignment spec sheets, I'm asking you guys to design your website at a width of 960 pixels. Let me just verify that. I'm pretty sure that that's one of the design specs here. Oh, you know, actually, that was really just for the first project. So let's talk about some potential widths that you may want to use then for this. Okay, 960 is actually a fantastic, pretty universal width for a website. Some other common numbers would be a width of 1080 or 1280 as well. For me, I'm going to just go with the basic 960 width on this. But if you feel like you do on a website that's a little bit wider, you're welcome to go about it that way. The nice thing also is this is not something that's written in stone at this part. This is just simply a design grid. As you're working, if you feel that maybe you do want your grid to become wider for your wireframe, you can always make that modification. Okay, you can even make that modification once you get into the coding and you start coding out your containers and your divs. So what I'm going to do here is just make a brand new file. So file new, and I'm going to type in some basic units. If you're using Illustrator like I'm doing right now, you do not want to be working in points. Points are not relevant at all to the web. You want to make sure you're working in pixels. Same thing if you're in Photoshop. You would want to be working with pixels throughout the entire design process. So I know that in my case, I'm going to want my document, or I should say my grid, to be 960 pixels wide. So I'm going to actually design in a document that's just a little bit wider than that, so I can kind of see the whole thing. So I'll end up going with maybe a width of 1080. Now the height, I'm going to set sort of a generic height to, knowing that, again, I can always modify my document later. I'm going to go ahead and make the height of this document 1600 pixels. And if we were doing like an interface design, I might set my color mode to RGB. For a document like this, it really does not matter if I'm working in RGB or CMYK color because it is really a black and white document. Okay. So I'm not going to worry about that. I'm really just worried about setting that height and that width. And again, I made my width 1080, made my height 1600. We'll click create, and there we go. Okay. Now, when it comes to starting to make some decisions in terms of the grid, I'm going to begin with the biggest containers first and sort of kind of work down from there, work backwards. So I'm going to grab my rectangle tool, and I'm really going to lean heavily here. Let's actually get my workspace set up so you guys can see things here.
Sorry, what was the height and width again?
The width that I'm working with is 1080, and the height that I'm working with is 1600. Give me a moment. I'm trying to figure out where my stuff.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. There we go. Okay, so what I want to make sure that I'm doing here before I get into it too far is I just want to make sure I've got a white fill, black stroke. I'm going to go with like a stroke width of 2 points on this. And one of the reasons why I like doing this in either Photoshop or Illustrator is when you have your shape tool selected, if you just double click on your screen, it will give you a window that will open up, which will allow me to type in exact values. So if I know I want my my wrapper to be 960 pixels wide, I can go ahead and type that value in there. Now, at this point, I'm building something sort of abstract here from the standpoint of I haven't written a proposal. I haven't figured out the pages that I'm going to make. I'm just sort of conducting this generic demo. It would be helpful for you guys as you're building this to kind of think a little bit about what you want to have on your homepage. How I'm going to go at this is I'm going to say for my homepage, I'm going to have navigation, maybe a nice large hero banner, maybe 3 areas that I'll call to action areas, which would basically kind of act like most homepages where maybe you have an image, a small blurb of type, and then like a button that they can click to learn more. And then I'll have a footer. That'll be a nice, I guess, generic example of elements that I can use for this. So being that I don't necessarily know yet exactly how tall I want my wrapper to be, I'm going to use a generic value of 1200 for now, knowing again that I can modify that as I go. So I'm going to go ahead and get my my wrapper in place here. Okay. Cool. And again, I can always elongate or shorten this as I need to. So maybe in the case of this document, maybe I want my navigation to be first. And I can do this one of a couple ways. If I know of an exact value for the height and width, I can just double click and enter those. Or if I want to work a little bit more from a standpoint of just kind of freeform designing, I can just draw these elements. Might be helpful if I see my rulers, so I get an idea of just how big these elements are. So I'll do Command R, that'll show my rulers. And maybe I want my navigation, I don't know, maybe 100 pixels in height. So I can go ahead and, again, just enter some values here. One way of doing it would be keeping the width to 960 and just sort of placing this element here. Another might be if I want my navigation to span the entire width, like 100% navigation. I can always just drag this all the way out to the edges. That would be a way that I could represent that. Okay. At this point, I could then start to populate this with some stuff. So I could, for example, maybe I want a logo to be up in the top left-hand corner. Okay, and then I could always put my X line segments in there. Let's get off of that for a moment. Drawing those X's can be kind of difficult inside of a small box like this. So here, I'm going to go ahead and just sort of freeform it. Smaller boxes in Illustrator or Photoshop are definitely a little bit goofy in terms of trying to draw those. Let's get my anchor point. There we go. So I'm using the sub selection tool or the direct selection tool to move a single point, just a little bit easier. And then here, I'll just duplicate that. And I can then I could either mirror it, or I'll just kind of grab it here real quick. And so grabbing single anchor points and doing something like that. Every now and again, there are times where you may want to clarify like what a thing is. It wouldn't be out of the question if I were to type on top of this logo. Okay. If you already know how many links you're going to have in your navigation, you could actually type those out at this moment as well. And you don't have to necessarily be specific about the actual names of them, but you could put like, link 1, link 2, link 3. And here, I'll go ahead and set this real quick. And I'm just going to use, for this project, I'm going to go ahead and use Arial for everything. Let's see if we get that spelled out correctly. There we go. Don't worry about the type being the actual size yet either. I'm using 20-point Arial here, maybe even Arial bold. I could underline that too if I wanted to at this point. But maybe starting to drop those elements in. I'm using, to duplicate these things, I'm using the keyboard shortcut of the Alt-Option key, and I'm just clicking and dragging out copies. So if you're wondering how that's happening. So I've got my Move tool selected, and if I hold down Alt-Option, and I click and drag on an element, you can drag out copies. That's universal in really every Adobe application. I'm not going to necessarily make all of my links. I think you guys hopefully got the idea here. All right, cool. So other things, maybe in this particular design, I want to have a nice large hero banner on my homepage. Oops, I do not want that to have a color in it. So I'm going to go ahead and make that white. Oh, here, actually, hang on. Let me just flip flop these. Set my fill to white. Okay. And actually here, let me be a little bit more accurate with this, rather than just sort of guessing. Maybe I want my hero banner to have, maybe, I don't know, a height of like 480 pixels. It's a pretty nice, robust area for a hero banner. Now, this might be a banner that has a image or a video in it. So I'm going to go ahead and again designate what it is. There we go. Again, that designates that it's an image. We do at some point. Oh shoot! I changed my nav. All right. We do at some point though want to start labeling these things. So here, for example, I'm going to go ahead and type out hero banner. Or banner would be fine too. I mean, I'm just sort of using web lingo here. Hero banner is just a larger banner. Sometimes banners have maybe text overlays or things of that nature. So I could go ahead and put in some more ipsum here at this point. Just to designate or to show that I might have some type in this area. And we might even potentially, not all banners have to have type like this on top of them. So don't feel like you've got to do that in yours, but if it's something that is appealing to you, you can do that. Then we can always add, if I'm going to have a clickable button here, that's something I can add as well. I will just go ahead and make this like all caps, maybe. Let's make that text white. Okay. Well, let's see, something still is up with my links. They're looking a little thinner than they should. Yeah, I've got a stroke on there. Let's get that stroke off. There we go. Cool. So maybe I decide then that I want to have like some call to action areas. So, call to action areas oftentimes are referred to as blurbs. They will include like an image, a small sentence or two of type, and a clickable button. Again, not saying that's something that you have to have, but it's fairly atypical of like modern web design. So at this point, we've got some math to do. Maybe I know that the width of my site is 960 pixels. Let's say that I want to have maybe 10 pixel padding in the beginning, 10 pixel padding in the middle of the first view, 10 pixel padding here, and then 10 pixel padding here. So that would be, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's say that's 10 pixel padding, maybe minus 40, right? So that's 960. I'm going to have 3 of these things. 3 and 6. Let's just do this actually. Let's work with some better math than that. I'll go with maybe 15 pixel padding in between. 15 plus 15 plus 15 plus 15. That's 60. So if my width is 960 and I'm subtracting off 60 from there, that gets me at 900. Divide that by 3 areas, that's 300 piece. I like that math a lot better than dealing with like decimal points. So at this point, I'll go ahead and make a box that has a width of 300. I'm not exactly sure about the height at this point, but I do feel like I want them to be at least as tall as it is wide. I might adjust that, we'll see. And I think before I make a duplicate of this, I am going to go ahead and put my image diagonal lines in place. Okay, at this point, I will group all that stuff together. So I've got them all selected. I'm just going to go to Object and Group. Cool. And now I can go ahead and extrapolate that out into the other pieces. And boy, my math looks like it's off at this point, doesn't it? Because that is, or I've got more than 15 pixels in between them. That's just what's likely happening here. So let's cool. All right, so maybe I've got some text blurbs underneath these. This is about as much as you want to style them in terms of, you can maybe set the sizes of these things, but that's generally about it. I'm going to go ahead and left align that. And once again, I can label these areas. I will label this one as call to action number 1. Maybe I'll even give this a white stroke so it sort of separates itself from the background there. And let's look at stroke. And the outside. Oh, when you do strokes with text get funky in Illustrator, you do actually have to create an outline out of that. It's got to be a shape for you to get an option on a stroke to go on like the outside. There we go. Here, I will actually then, instead of labeling these 1, 2, 3, and 4, I'm going to go ahead and just call them CTA. Let's see, I've got a little remnant of something kind of going on out here. There we go. So I could have potentially even just waited until I had the CTA in there before I duplicated these. I guess that would have been a little bit faster. And then maybe I've got another button and text possibly under these things, or maybe on the actual images, number of ways we could do this. I'm gonna go ahead and bring this to the front. Yeah, again, sometimes you see call to action buttons on the images, sometimes you see them underneath. I think in this design, maybe I want to go with them underneath. And then lastly, I will account for a footer. Since I went with a full width nav, maybe I'll go with a full width footer then as well. No color in there, let's get that out. Cool. And then maybe we've got some text going on down here as well. All right. And this is very much what a wireframe design, a very basic one, obviously, would look like. But again, I could take this maybe a little bit further. I could always put like some text up here that maybe says logo, although that's not a great way to do it because that text has already been, I've already created outlines from that. But it's okay to be descriptive with things. I mean, ultimately, this should be a functional document more than anything else. So it's not frowned upon by any means to add little bits of info like I'm doing here. Cool. And that's one example of creating a wireframe. Again, about as far as you may want to take this, depending on the project and depending on the client's needs. I have definitely seen areas where some gray is used to communicate importance. So if navigation obviously is an important area, we can add some gray to that. If these call to action areas are particularly important, we can add some color to those as well. But for a basic website design like we're doing, I don't necessarily need to see that from you guys. In fact, I would almost rather it just be nice and clean and black and white like this. And we'd be doing this for not only the homepage, but then any subsequent subpages as well. And then ultimately where we go with this then is over the next few weeks, we begin to code these. And this is a nice example of like a 3-column layout that we have here within this homepage. Subpages, you can certainly go 3-column. Most of the time for a project like this, my recommendation is going to be 2-column. It really just depends though on just how wide you're making your design. But pick one of your subpages then to make a wireframe from. And then when you're done, you're just simply saving this document as a flattened PDF. Let's talk about that real quick. So I'd want to save the original, first of all, as an Illustrator file. So I'll go ahead and I'll do that real quick. Let me just put that on my desktop for now. So I'm saving that as an Illustrator file that I can edit, but I would then save it as a flattened PDF to submit to the Google Drive. And we'll do that with a file save as. I'll change my format here to PDF. And then when this page pops up, to actually get it to become a flattened PDF, you just want to uncheck these options. So we don't want the Illustrator editing capabilities or thumbnails or layers. I mean, all of those things create an unflattened PDF. You can save that, or I should say a PDF with layers is what that makes. But that actually makes a flattened PDF for me. All right, having seen me kind of walk through that, what do you guys think? Any questions about this at this point? No? Okay. Cool. Again, as always, if you think of anything as we move along here.
I do have a question as far as this would be like your home page, is that correct?
Yeah,
So
that's
you would
correct.
have can your home page or home link be your about us page? Or, you know what I mean, or about the, or is that, should that be separate?
That's a great question. So a home page can be used to communicate information that might normally go like on an about page. I mean, we're certainly seeing that more and more, right? Where there's just not an about us page that's just sort of presented right on the home page. We would still refer to it as the home page if that's our starting point, and it would still, of course, be called index. But yeah, you could absolutely include that, like about us information directly on the home page. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
I had a question about how many subpages you
Yeah. So I'm looking for 5
have.
subpages. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The connection's kind of breaking up a little bit. Could you repeat that one more time?
Oh, okay. Are you supposed to have 5 total pages, including the home page, or is it the home page and then 5 subpages?
Yes, that last one. So homepage plus 5 pages. Let me just take a look at the assignment sheet to make sure that I'm not leading you astray. But yeah, that's what I thought. One homepage plus plus 5 subpages. So it'll have a total of 6 pages altogether. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. All right, cool. Well, guys, that effectively is sort of a walkthrough in terms of how you would create part 3 of the project. And again, just to clarify, I'm looking for a home page and 1 subpage wireframe. Okay. Don't design out all your wireframes for all the subpages because they're likely going to be very, very similar. Okay. All right. Cool. Well, let's turn our attention then to talking a bit about the direction that you guys want to take this project. I'm definitely curious to hear from you guys on this. Before we jump into that, I'm just going to fill up the coffee mug here one more time, and we'll get rolling with those project proposals. All right. So similarly to how we did the first project, I'll open up the Google Drive and I'll pull up the proposal folder. And I mean, this will be fairly brief. We don't necessarily need to like read each proposal verbatim. I would much rather just, take a look at them and have you guys kind of summarize for us. What I'm interested really are 2 things from you guys. I'm interested in the subject for your project, which obviously is a location, being that this is a promotional tourism project. And I'm interested in your audience. I'm going to be looking for relatively streamlined audiences, very much like we talked about a few weeks ago. If I feel like the audience is too broad, we'll have a discussion about ways that which we can kind of narrow it down. Keeping in mind the one example that I gave you guys, how with the student example, Robin's website that I showed you guys, she chose Chicago as her destination, but her audience was very much for people who would be vacationing with their dogs. So it was like a dog-friendly Chicago site, which is a wonderful way to get down to a very, very specific audience. And again, the thought process behind that, guys, is that it's just difficult with 6 pages to build a comprehensive site otherwise for a large location. I mean, good luck trying to build a website for Chicago with just 6 pages. It's just going to be so generic that it just won't even, it's not even really worth building. So yeah, if you fall into that boat and you hear me talking to you about like, how do we streamline the audience? It's not that I'm saying that like your audience, obviously like what we want to avoid is, again, I'll use Chicago as an example. We want to avoid an audience that says like anybody who might want to go to Chicago. I mean, that's just such a generic, broad thing to design for 6 pages. It becomes next to impossible to do anything, worthwhile at all. Okay. So that's sort of my thought process here when we're discussing the audience. Let's see here. I think I'll just end up going through these sort of alphabetic, well, not necessarily alphabetically, but the way that they're sort of sitting in here, we'll go through them that way. So how are we looking time-wise? Not bad. We've got about an hour of class. I think if we spend about 5 minutes or so on each of these, it'll give us a good idea in terms of what direction we're wanting to go. And we should be able to get through those easily then in the allotted time that we have. So Carlos, we're going to start with yours. Feel free to unmute yourself. I'll pull open your proposal here. Okay. All right. So one thing, and this is a common thing that I would have loved to have talked about last week, had we met like we are right now. But for this, it's who this is for is not necessarily, this is not the end user. This would be the client. So in the case of, if we're talking about Spain as being the location, it would potentially be like the travel bureau for Spain. It might be a government entity, it might be a for-profit entity, but it's something that would be ultimately be like who the actual client would be that you're building this from. Okay. Let's see here. So, oh my God. All right, so Carlos, talk to us a little bit about the direction you want to take this website. Okay, let's see. I guess I shouldn't assume that we're all here. Let me take a look real quick at who is here. Yeah, looks like Carlos is not here, and that's okay. So I'll add this to the recording just so Carlos can watch this later. So Carlos, one of the things you want to think about is, again, who the client is, who from Spain would be commissioning you to make this website, okay? What we want to avoid, though, is very much like what I was talking about earlier with using the Chicago example. We don't necessarily want to just say tourists, like everybody who might be interested in going to Spain, and then figuring that we can build that website in just like 6 pages. I really want you to think about how to make this more specific in terms of your audience. So like here, you're definitely talking about like a younger tourist, and that's awesome. What else can we do to maybe sort of streamline that? What specifically about this young group? Are they, like, what's their goal when they go there? Maybe it's to see very specific tourist locations. Maybe it is, I don't know, like the, backpacking across Spain sort of a thing. Maybe it's that sort of a type of vacation. Maybe it is to, I don't know. Like I have to admit, like I don't know much about the country of Spain, so I don't know that I'm necessarily going to be able to like give you great qualifiers. But maybe it's to take a cruise around Spain or seeing Spain by boat or something very specific. Okay, that would be the one thing I would really push you to try and streamline with this particular site. Obviously Spain is an old country coming from, being that it's in Europe. Maybe it's to see, I don't know, castles in Spain or something along those lines. So definitely think about like a specific angle that you can use to reduce this target audience down, okay? Because even though you are putting some qualifiers on there, like a 20-year range of age, there's not much else that you're qualifying here. And I think that that's going to really, really allow you to make just a cool, specific micro site. All right, let's see here. Let's see, Catherine, let me pull yours up here next. Okay. Cool. So I love right off the bat that you've got a qualifier on here in terms of saying folks that are interested in visiting New Orleans for the first time. Right off the bat, that really allows you to hone in on a specific audience and approach it from a standpoint of you're giving them information as newbies, right? Like which would be very, very different if you were building a site for folks who want to take a deep dive, like who've been to New Orleans many times before. So I like that. So Catherine, talk to us a little bit, if you would, about
Okay.
yes for this.
The people that I wanted to target, it will be like first time traveling to Louisiana, but also they're considering the food because it's a very, very well known area for the food, cuisine, and the historical part of it. So that's who I am trying to target, people that want to see the history and try the cuisine in that location.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that. I think that's fantastic. I mean, food obviously being the big thing, right? Like, again, we're talking about a place like I've never been to New Orleans. So this is definitely on the bucket list. And that's my main reason for wanting to go down there. It's just, I want to go down there for like a week and just eat. So yeah, that's wonderful. I mean, when we're talking about things like food too, Catherine, you're going to be able to hopefully have some beautiful images of food or the locations that we'd be eating the food. And
Yes.
those types of images really speak for themselves, but yeah,
Definitely, I want to put big images of the food.
yeah, absolutely. And I'm wondering, I mean, traditionally speaking, the way you've broken things down, we might have a page for food, a page for lodging, a page for historical locations, and a page for transportation. But maybe an alternate way to think about this is that on every page, all of these things are covered. For example, there could be a page about a specific type of food, maybe in a specific location of New Orleans, where we're talking about like maybe you're breaking up the city into like quadrants, and on each of those pages, you've got a list of the food places, the lodging, the historical locations, and transportation. Or maybe it's restaurant specific. Maybe we've got like 5 of the best places to eat in New Orleans, and they're highlighted one per page. And then underneath the information about the restaurant, you've got lodging if you want to stay as close as possible to this place, historical locations in the proximity, as well as transportation. So I think there's a few ways you could go. You could very much, again, you could break those up, or you could start to combine them. That's the beauty of having something that's so specific like you've created here. But I like this a lot. I don't think I have a suggestion for you in terms of trying to drill down any further with your target audience. So without looking at your flow chart here, what do you feel? How do you feel? Actually, let's actually, you guys made the flow charts. Let's look at them real quick. We don't necessarily have to look at them all. But since I am very curious about how you broke down the pages, let's give that a look real quick. Let's see. Okay, cool. So in this case, very much breaking it down into more of a traditional way, which is absolutely okay. I think you'll be just fine with that. Okay, cool. Nice flow chart, by the way, nice and clean and functional. All right, cool. Thanks, Catherine. Appreciate it. Jacob, let's pull up yours next. Okay. Cool. So here we have something very, very specific. A single building location, in this case for a bakery.
Yeah. So this bakery is in Scotland. I have the cookbook that the owner of the bakery wrote.
Cool.
She was actually on one of the first seasons of the Great British Bake Off.
Excellent. Okay.
So my target audience is, people who live in that area. It's not a very big town, so it's not like a touristy area,
Mhm.
but it's more for the people who are in the area. So anybody really, and I said between the ages of 15 and 16 because the reason that I would be building the website for the client is to build awareness.
Mm,
Like they have already established social media.
mhm.
So you can't really put all the information about menu and stuff on social media. So this would be somewhere that people would go to from their Instagram or Twitter or something.
Cool.
So, people really under the age of 15 or who are not in their teens don't really have that yet. And
Yep.
people over the age of 60 may not use it.
Yep, exactly.
So
Okay.
it would be for that. And then, my design, they do already have a website and it's very clean and simple.
Mhm.
And that's also the way the cookbook is designed. So
Okay.
nice, big, colorful pictures of
Yeah.
their baked goods would be the main color for the website. But
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
think
I agree, Jacob. I think the bigger the pictures of delicious food, the more you're going to get people to take action. When you're dealing with food, food is almost easy. If you've got big, beautiful pictures of it, I would, to the point where I would recommend having images that are at least as big as half of the page,
Yeah.
if not, full width images of food,
mhm,
Yeah.
yeah.
Cool. And I'm okay with you having a more generic audience like this because we're talking about such a specific location. The reason why I'm trying to have you guys avoid generic audiences with large locations like Chicago, or earlier I was talking about Spain, the amount of people who travel to a country or a big city, we're talking in the millions every year. Versus, this is, it sounds like a prestigious bakery, but you could probably, the amount of folks that visit this place in a year probably has a 0 or 2 less, at least, than compared to the country of Spain,
Yeah.
So we're already dealing with a smaller audience. And there are, it's just a matter of identifying the common denominators between the folks who would go to this bakery. We can assume that they like high quality baked goods. And that's the primary reason for them going here. And that is a very specific reason, which just immediately allows you to start to communicate to them in a way that will cause them to act. Because that's sort of the idea here. You guys have heard me use that term a lot. When we're dealing with a promotional anything, the idea is to get people to take action. It might be by providing them information that then they decide to take action. And that information, again, in this case, hopefully is going to come in the form of maybe a menu, maybe big pictures, beautiful pictures of the food, as well as, I'm guessing, the history, possibly a bit here as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do have an about page that I'm going to include, and I'm going to have a page that details the process.
Cool. Oh, excellent. That's very cool. Okay. Excellent. Jacob, I think you are, you're good to go. I don't think that anything needs to be streamlined here at all. You are definitely ready to move forward with the wireframes.
Thank you.
Okay, Gurpreet, let's give yours a look here next. Okay, cool. Disneyland, California. Let's see here. So this is a website that helps parents. So right off the bat, that is a qualifier, and I like that, right? This is not necessarily for kids and parents, but more specifically for an older audience, where they can find out information about hotels, look for a place that is famous in Disneyland. Yeah, I mean, potentially maybe talking about like some of the more like famous rides or locations within Disneyland, I think that makes sense. That's certainly going to make the audience take action if we're enticing them with some of the better features that the park has to offer.
Okay.
Let's see. Cool. So yeah, I do think in terms of the audience, I would say probably more parents than kids. Now,
Okay.
don't get me wrong. Like you could build a wonderful site for Disneyland for kids, but I feel like that would be a very different thing then, right? If you were trying to do a site for parents and kids with just 6 pages. I do believe that would be very difficult to construct.
Okay, so you want only for parents, right?
Well, I think you could go either way, Rupert. I don't necessarily think it up here it said parents, so I was attracted to that. But you could
Okay.
also, I think you could pick kids or parents.
Okay.
Either way, it's starting to limit the audience for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that sort of that in of itself is enough of a reduction of audience. Again, I know that Disneyland gets out lots of guests every year. Maybe another qualifier we could put on here would be maybe for parents who are going to take their children to Disneyland, and maybe other qualifiers could be, and maybe looking to stay like at one of the hotel parks, or
Okay.
the opposite way could be, maybe trying to do the Disneyland vacation on a budget, although I think inherently just off, that's the thing that's very difficult to do just because of the cost of going to the park. So yeah, maybe again, it's the whole Disneyland experience of going there, staying at the park type of a thing.
Okay.
Or again, I'm throwing ideas out there and sort of brainstorming. It could be, the audience could be another way to maybe limit things, because we're talking about a destination that people come to from all over the world. Maybe it could be a promotional Disney site for tourists who are coming, international tourists, possibly. I don't know. I'm just sort of throwing ideas out there for you.
Okay.
Ultimately, I think just saying parents is probably enough of a qualifier so that you understand who your audience is, and you're not trying to write text for small children and for adults. That's a difficult thing to do.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Gilbert.
Mhm.
All right, let's see. Jean-Luc, let's give yours a look here next. Okay, so this is a promotional site. It's a tour of the National Museums and Galleries in DC. Okay, cool. So Jean-Luc, talk to us a little bit about the direction that you want to take this project. Let's see, make sure he's here. Nope. Okay. All right, no worries. Again, I'll throw some feedback out here. So my first impression with this is that I feel like this may be, again, a little bit too broad of an audience. We've got a very, very large age range, and I don't really see most, there's not really any qualifiers on here so much. We're just saying individuals to get the most use out of the site would likely be tourists or teachers planning school trips. I mean, this could be the qualifier. Maybe what we use to reduce the audience is we say that this is a website for the National Museums and Galleries in DC. Specifically, the audience is this website is specifically made for teachers who are planning school trips. Another way to, again, streamline this even further is to say teachers of elementary school, or teachers of middle school, or teachers of high school that are planning trips. That just continues to drill down to a more concise, streamlined audience. So, Jean-Luc, when you watch this later, I mean, I don't know, this may not necessarily have been your original vision. I'm not saying it has to be teachers, but seeing that I'm seeing that here, I figured that I would kind of take it and run with it. It does seem like a wonderful way to drill down to a small, concise audience. So I want you to think about that between now and next week. Okay, let's see, Chaz, yours is up next here. All right, nice looking proposal, sir.
Thank you. I kind of made it more like a business proposal.
Yeah, I like this. Cool, so Cedar Point. So talk to us a bit about this.
So when you first brought up the project, Cedar Point popped in my head. So where I was going with this was something that could be like when you're already in the park. I don't know if it'd be more like a website or maybe an app, but where it's easy for you to pull this up and you can find where the rides are, like a map of everything. Where all the dining, where you want to go eat, where entertainment or live shows, they do a lot of that too. And I just want this, that would be like each page, like rides, dining, entertainment, shopping, and then maybe like a contact form. That one I wasn't too sure what I was going to do with that yet, but and they can list out all the rides. And then I know that when I went to the site, they were talking about like thrill levels. So you could tell like the thrill level of each ride and if it would be something for little kids or something for more adults
Yeah.
in that aspect.
Yeah, and that could even be a way for you to break down the site, without looking at your flow chart or without having seen it yet. Maybe this whole website is just broken down by thrill levels, where
Okay.
thrill level 1, thrill level 2, 3, not that the whole thing has to be that way. Maybe you've got, an additional page for things that maybe don't fit into thrill level, but rather like, I don't know, restaurants, for example. It's been a minute. Last time I was at Cedar Point was probably 10 years ago. And I don't remember on the map how it was broken down. It's been too long for me. I don't remember if there were like specific areas of the park or not. Plus I had gone during the Halloween, horror night thing that they do there. So the park wasn't quite like how it normally would be anyway, but yeah, I like the thrill level idea just because each section could be, you're kind of tailoring it. Each section is almost sort of tailored to a different audience in and of itself. You know what I mean? In terms of,
Right.
So that's certainly an option for you. I suppose one of the pages, like you said, you weren't sure about other pages. I mean, one page could actually just be a map, that's certainly an option for you. Or at the very least, maybe we could link to an existing map, like a PDF of the map that they could download. That's easy enough to do. I'd be happy to show you how to do that. Yeah, I do think you could get away with just a more generic audience on this. Similarly, though, to what I talked about with Group Read, I would suggest figuring out though whether or not this is a site more for adults to use or for kids to use. And you could go either way with this, right? I mean, if you choose to make a interactive website for younger kids, it's just tailored to them. So not large areas of text. It's written, to their level of understanding and probably much, much more visual. And that could be a cool thing to do as well. Okay. That's something for all of you guys to think about is, building a website for a younger audience can be an awful lot of fun to put together. Okay. But yeah, so do think about that, Chaz. Again,
Okay.
I love the way that this proposal looks. It's a wonderful way to go above and beyond with it. And even to the point where, guys, this is the type of proposal that could directly then get put into a portfolio, which is a wonderful supporting document to be able to, flip through a portfolio, see the proposal for it, see a flow chart, see wireframes, and then the final project itself. That impresses the hell out of art directors when they're going through a portfolio and they see that level of commitment to the developmental work of a project. So well done. I like that a lot.
Thank you.
All right, Jose, let's give yours a look here. Okay. All right, Jose, so you are proposing London. And right off the bat, we are immediately putting a qualifier here to limit the audience. So people who are traveling alone to London, that I like. So talk to me a little bit about the idea for that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, so the idea was to people who are usually traveling alone to London, people who just want to take trips alone, have money to spend, or usually people who are taking business trips and are there for 1 or 2 days and usually don't know what to do. So the idea was just to provide spots, travel, and also just as well as safety tips as well, especially if you're traveling alone.
Totally. I think that's fantastic. I love this. I mean, so again, we're talking about young people, young single people in their mid to late 20s and 30s, college educated, income wise, low to middle class Americans, single travelers having to do research. Business not yeah. No, I like this a lot. I think that's an absolutely fantastic element that you're using here, a qualifier to streamline the audience. So perfect. I don't have a suggestion for you in terms of streamlining that any further. I think that's wonderful. Yeah, this will be the first project I've had on this type of a website where being single or a single traveler is the qualifier. Love it.
Thank you.
All right, Jasmine, let's give yours a look here next. All right, the Dells. Cool. This is funny. This is one that's, I mean, it's obviously, I don't want to say it's local, but it's close. But this is the first time I've had a student choose this for this project. And I'm sort of surprised. I guess I never really thought much about it, but seeing it here, I'm like, wow, I'm wondering why folks haven't done this one already. But let's see, Jasmine, it doesn't look like you are in class here, so I will give you some thoughts on this.
I'm actually right here.
Oh, you are? Okay, cool. Let's see. I'm sorry, I didn't see your name listed in the list here. I didn't go back far. Oh, there you are. Yeah, I didn't go back far enough. My bad. Cool. So Jasmine, talk to us a little bit about the thought on this and how you're going to streamline your audience a bit.
Well, I do want to target parents or just anyone with children.
Okay, excellent. So let's see. So additional things you can think about to streamline even further would be some of the things you heard me talk about with folks who have already chosen some of these parks. So it could be, if we're going to go for adults with children, I mean, that's one thing right off the bat. Another thing you could potentially think about would be folks maybe from, you could think about folks that are maybe out of state that might be wanting to come here. Another way to go about it would be folks that are closer, maybe folks from neighboring states, maybe, you know, from, maybe the target audience is folks from Michigan, Illinois, and maybe Minnesota, for example. Not saying that you have to go that route, but again, it definitely makes it a little bit easier to communicate to, not only communicate to, but to design in a way that will resonate with your, your exact audience. No, I think the Dells will work out well for you. Yeah, and I think you're saying some things here as well, similar to some of the other folks that are doing the parks. I think it makes a lot of sense to make a vibrant design, lots of color. I guess that's another thing too, as well as something else that kind of streamlines your audience. The Dells, sort of by its very nature, is water intense. So that's, yeah, I think you're probably okay just saying, that this is for adults with children. You can think about maybe incorporating some of those other things I mentioned, but I don't necessarily know that you have to per se.
I'll definitely consider.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Jasmine.
Mm-hmm.
All right, cool. Getting there, guys. Let's see. Well, maybe we're about halfway through. Yeah. Okay, cool. Bella, let's give yours a look here next. So you are thinking of important landmarks in the Netherlands that relate to Vincent van Gogh. Very cool. That's a wonderful way to go about like streamlining your audience, and should make for a wonderfully visual website as well. Yeah, fantastic here. So the target audience is adults who can afford a vacation with interests in Van Gogh art history. They would use this project as a guide to learn not only where to go, but which locations are accessible to the public and still existing. They're most likely looking for information, but would also put an emphasis on aesthetics since the topic is art related. Yeah, I think aesthetics are going to play a huge role in this site, because your audience being, you said it there, these are folks that are interested in art. They're going to respond well to a very visual experience with your website. So that's fantastic. I do not have a suggestion for you in terms of streamlining it any further. I think you've done a wonderful job of identifying a very nice niche.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Jennifer, let's give yours a look next.
Okay, I just got it in there.
Cool.
I decided to do it on Bogus Mountain. Basin is actually the place, because I just wanted to inform people that there's things to do other than just ski. You know, it's not just a winter activity. There's a summer, they have, all seasons are different. They have music concert, yoga in the summer, in the mountain. They have tons of mountain bike stuff. So I just thought that I would open that up, be more informational. they have festivals there. My sister lives there and I've been there and I was really surprised to hear all the activities that they did.
Yeah.
You know, off season of snow. So that's what I was thinking.
Cool. Yeah, and so potentially this sets up really nicely then for each, you could organize this literally based on season then, right? I mean,
Well,
um,
that's where I did do my flow chart. It's in there. I was thinking I did like about page and it's supposed to be dining is the next one and then entertainment and then sport activities and then contact us. And I was thinking within those, I can go like summer, winter. I don't know. Or should I do summer, winter? You know?
yeah, no, I hear you. I mean, for me, if I were designing this, I would
Okay.
probably go based by season,
Okay.
just because I feel like if you're designing a page for winter activities, they're all gonna have a similar feel to them, and that way the winter page will feel very cohesive, rather than like jumping into a festivals page and having festivals across like 4 different seasons. Or maybe that's not the best example. Festivals probably are limited to only a few seasons, but no, don't get me wrong. You could certainly do it the way that you are suggesting, but I feel like having a spring page is likely like looking at any of these individual seasons. I feel like people would be more apt to want to visit one of those during one of those seasons because of the information that they're seeing on that given page.
Yes, absolutely correct.
Yeah,
That
so
makes sense.
maybe think about it from that standpoint. And for any of you guys, if you want to adjust your flow chart, that's totally cool. Don't feel like you guys are all like locked down and written in stone because you have already submitted that. If you want to deviate from that, if it makes for a better project, by all means, please feel free. Okay, that's part of the learning process and what we're going through and having this dialogue.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
I'm gonna totally change mine as usual.
Jen, is the mountain, the Idaho mountain that you did in the digital design class, is that this bogus mountain?
Yes,
Okay, cool.
yes, but it looks different than what I did.
Okay.
I tried.
Well, thanks, Dan. Appreciate it.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm. All right, Kyle, let's give yours a look here next.
Yeah, so I did mine on the city of Seattle. Yeah, my main target audience here was for younger people who might be looking for a place to maybe attend college or go on vacation.
Mhm.
And I honestly don't have much to say about it other than that right now.
Okay. Kyle, I highlighted a line that you have in your proposal that I like a lot. And you might want to think about this, like this line alone, maybe not necessarily going about this from the standpoint of trying to get somebody to come and visit and go on vacation, but to persuade people to come and move to the city, which is a very different thing, right? Than like going on vacation. I love that. I think that's a wonderful way to streamline your audience and to really, really hone in on your message, because it's essentially a persuasive website with a very, very like specific idea to basically highlight like why this city is not only a great place to ultimately it's a great place to actually live in rather than just visit. So think about that. That's awesome. That's another direction that I have not had any students in the past take this project. So if you wanted to go that route where it's not technically a tourism site anymore, but I would absolutely be willing to, if you wanted to go take it that route, I'd be absolutely like willing to let you bend this project slightly and make it in a way where you're trying to get people to come live there permanently rather than just visit.
Okay.
So think about that a little bit. If you do decide that you want to go the tourist angle, I would be fine with that as well. But I do think that this is a really unique angle on the site.
All right. Well, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Let's see here. I think this is Nick. Let's see. Yeah. Zoom out on this a little bit. Okay. All right, looks like Bartlett is our location in this case. Okay. Cool. So this is actually then for folks who have recently moved into Bartlett and want to learn more about it. That's really cool also. So in this case, we've got the target audience really as new residents of Bartlett. That's fantastic. That's about as streamlined as you could possibly get on a project like this. I don't know. I don't know that I don't know that I have suggestions for you in terms of streamlining it any further, but I mean, obviously you're talking about folks who are newly moved here. So they're already living there. It's just a matter of talking about the amenities and the things to get out and actually do there in Bartlett. That's awesome. Nick, are you a new resident to Bartlett? What inspired the audience here? I like this.
I grew up in Bartlett, and it's just the kind of idea I had since I've been to downtown Bartlett a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot of cool attractions, food, restaurants, history,
Cool.
and shops. So I think like it'd be interesting to tell other people about it too.
Yeah. All right. Excellent. Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, definitely, really enforce that that aspect of like sort of a welcome to Bartlett. And yeah, how are you thinking about breaking this up here? It looks like food, entertainment, history, shops. Yeah, cool. I think that summarizes very nicely. All right, cool. Thanks, Nick.
Yep. Thank you.
Jalen, it looks like you are up next here. Okay, Seoul, South Korea. Jalen, talk to us a little bit about your audience. How are you thinking about streamlining this so that it's not necessarily everybody who might be interested in going to Seoul?
Yeah, kind of what you were talking about, like maybe it's too broad, I might have to revise it. But I originally had put like so adults, and so the people who I would focus more on, like people who aren't necessarily there for like the high end stuff, more people who just like want to visit places like that might not be of big expense, or like even trying food, more street food, like in the marketplace.
Cool. So much more of like an authentic Seoul sort of an experience.
Yeah, and kind of what I talk about in the proposal, kind of the way of setting up the website would be having it go from like the more cultural stuff to the more modern stuff, like things that places you can visit that are more modern. So
Cool.
just working through that through the website.
Yeah, no, I love that. Similarly to how, like when I was talking with Jen about hers being broken up in the season, by grouping those things together, the pages are going to have a really cohesive feel. So if you're talking about like the more ancient things that people can, visit, having those all on the same page is going to create like a really nice sense of continuity within that page, going all the way through like the modern page. Again, like having all of those modern photos together in modern locations will also feel nice and cohesive. Cool. So yeah, I think if you want to do, like again, sort of a more authentic, less expensive trip, you're probably dealing with a much younger audience. So, maybe even going a little bit younger than 25, maybe we're talking about like 21 through, 31. It's not to say that older folks couldn't use your site, right? That's not who you're specifically targeting potentially.
Okay.
But yeah, I think that'll be a wonderful way to streamline this.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Okay, let's see. All right, do we make it down to the last one? Kathy, I think yours may be the last. Okay, cool. Ooh, okay, Switzerland.
Yeah. So mine is basically the city of Grindelwald, which is a city in Switzerland. And it is kind of known for partly, it has some extreme experiences, canyoning, and just all these different experiences that you can do kind of more towards the maybe the 25 to 45 range, those that have the energy, the ability to do these activities.
Okay.
So it's basically specifically towards that group of people and those kind of not extreme experiences, but the more active experience.
Sure. Which again, that to me, that works in terms of a more streamlined audience. You're talking, you've got it
Okay.
narrowed down to a 20-year age range. And the qualifier here being folks that are very active. So yeah, that certainly works. Cool. Let's see. I don't know that I have a question or an area here that I feel like you need to, tighten up a little bit. I feel like it'll work well. I like that you've actually got a name for this as well. That's something to think about, actually. I'm glad this is in the last one that we're looking at. By no means do you guys have to develop a name or a logo for your website, but it can be very helpful if you do. Okay, so think about that over like the next few weeks. Even if it's something like, like we were talking about, like, I don't know, a moment ago on Jalen's, we were talking about soul. It could be like, the name of the site could be like Authentic Soul, for example, or, the Bartlett website that Nick had there. I'm not saying for any of you guys, this has to be what you guys do, but, welcome to Bartlett or something along those lines, right? Like having a name for your site allows you to potentially make a little like type, based logo that just sort of immediately gives it a more official look and feel. Okay. And some of you actually have got locations that probably already have logos like Wisconsin Dells or Disneyland. In those cases, again, that's going to really help including that into your designs. It's going to feel far more official. So I would certainly recommend that over the next few weeks as you guys are thinking about this. But yeah, I very much, we've got a really wide range of locations here and audiences. This should be a lot of fun to see these things come together. Before we wrap up here, I just wanted to open it up one more time for questions for the wireframes that are due next week. Do you guys have any questions at all about any aspect of the wireframes and what my expectations are for next week?
I just had one question about, while I was looking at you watching you make the wireframe, and you had all, the links and the logo and then the banner, but then you had like the 2-column underneath, or the 3-column boxes. And what specifically are you looking for those?
So
I get that, yeah.
No, that was really just sort of an example, Kathy, sort of a generic example. You don't necessarily have to have call to actions there. The way, like, my thought process there was, like, on a lot of modern websites, the homepage is kind of handled like how the table of contents in a magazine is. So oftentimes, if you open up the table of contents in a magazine, you'll have some of the bigger stories or the areas that they really want to call attention to. There might be like large photos and a blurb about the article, versus sometimes they just have like some small, little text, like the name of the article and the page number. So like, for example, here, let's see, I don't know if I still have these on this computer.
So maybe just a blurb of drawing the reader in, basically,
exactly,
to show what's contained in the website.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah,
That makes
very
sense.
much like that. Yeah, something that you guys might want to think about as well, if you're having a hard time kind of contemplating, like, what to put on a homepage, the best way to figure that out, literally spend 5 to 10 minutes and just do a Google search for a few tourism sites. See what they have on the homepage. There's going to probably be some things on those pages that you hadn't thought about. If you've never designed a tourism site before, you shouldn't, haven't gone through that experience. And if you don't look at real examples, guys, it's going to be like you're just making it up out of thin air, and it'll come across that way. So spend a little time looking at actual tourism sites. It doesn't even have to be the spot that you're proposing you want to make the site for. It could be any tourism sites. Look at 4, 5, 6 different tourism sites and look at what's on their homepage. You'll immediately get some good ideas for how that's handled. Okay. And again, just to reiterate, this was merely an example. I am not suggesting that yours has to have a hero banner and 3 call to actions. It can, by all means, if you want to follow this model, you certainly can. But it doesn't have to be laid out in this way. I was just very much sort of picking kind of a you know, a classic generic way of doing it that I, you know, you see tried and true in a lot of websites. Yeah, good question, Kathy. I'm glad that you asked that for us to kind of pull this back up and talk about it again.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, sorry, Kathy. Can I do 4 call to action images?
Oh.
Okay,
Absolutely.
I could do like the seasons.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And they do not necessarily even have to be lined up, you know, in a row like this. It could be 2 and 2, or it could be, you know, here, I mean, I'm going to kind of break this apart now at this point, but that's okay. I mean, you could display them in any way that you feel is applicable to your site. The shift key is not working. I'm not sure why. You know, maybe you've got much longer images that, you know, the call to actions are sort of stacked like this. And, you know, maybe they don't even have, I've seen this done where they don't even have text blurbs per se. This is not making it easy for me. I should have grouped these. You know, call to actions could be something like this, where they're simply image based, you know, with a button, or, you know, I don't know. There are lots of ways that you guys can go about this for certain. So yeah, please keep that only in mind as just a sort of a generic example that I built, and not that I expect all of yours to look that exact same way. I want you guys to design these the way that you feel would be most effective. And again, maybe it is exactly the way I built mine there, but it does not have to be. Cool. Any other comments, questions, concerns? Okay, cool. As always, guys, if you think of anything over the course of the week and you've got questions, please feel free to shoot me an email and I will get back to you as soon as I can. Otherwise, as always, have a productive week, and just, you know, reach out to me if you need anything. Look forward to taking a look at these next week. Again, next week I will have another video walkthrough ready for you guys as we learn how to start coding more advanced layouts. I'll have another box model project for you guys where we're actually building box models with multiple columns and whatnot. So be prepared for that, and then know that after this step here, we really start to get designing, because what we're going to eventually be doing then, we'll talk about this next week, we take these wireframes and we populate them with stuff. We add the real fonts, the real images, the real colors, and very quickly you'll be looking at website designs that are then at that point then ready to start being coded. So it all comes together fairly rapidly here. All right, guys, nice work on those proposals. Have a good productive week, and I will see you all next time.
All right, see you next week.
Okay,
Bye.
thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Take care, guys.